All right, guys, we're back with our second episode and part two of Urban Essentials. We're here today with John Sinopoli of the Ascari Hospitality Group. They own Ascari Enoteca on the corner of Caroline and Queen. They own High Low Bar and Gare de l'Est, also on the East End at Dundas and Carlaw. And they just opened their most recent restaurant, Ascari, on King West right at King and Portland. So thanks for joining us today, John. And also, of course, I have with me Ara Memorian, of Spring Realty, well-known agent in the East End and the Leslieville area. So thanks for joining me today, John.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you're still surviving? How are the restaurants doing these days?
Yeah, well, the restaurants are closed, so surviving would be a very strong word. It's a difficult time. A few months ago, we would have never guessed that we'd be fighting for our lives, literally, in the business that we've built, starting in Riverside and Leslieville over the past 12 years. So it's a challenging time for not just for us, but our staff. We laid off 97 employees on March 15th. So it's a lot of people's lives at stake. We're closed, but we've just recently started with some grocery box business out of Ascari Enoteca. So that's positive. The uptake on that from our customers and the neighborhood has been really, really strong. So we're very encouraged that we'll be able to grow that into something that makes a couple bucks, but it's definitely not enough margin to pay the rent. It's just a good opportunity to get people back on the payroll and get the community back engaged with what we do in our brand. So it's definitely a productive endeavor in terms of that, but it's not enough dollars to really move the needle in terms of where we need to be to make our landlords whole, make our suppliers whole, and kind of get our business back up and running.
For sure.
How does that look?
What's that?
Sorry, Ryan. Sorry to cut you off, Ryan. Just wanted to ask real quick. Are you communicating with your landlords? Are they responsive to sort of your situation? Or, I know who your landlord is at Caroline, another local East Ender that we should probably get on the show at some point.
You should. We have been talking with our landlords. We have a meeting with Ted tomorrow, who you speak of at Queen and Caroline. For the most part, they've been very, very amenable. They understand our situation. They know it's through no fault of our own. But for all landlords, there's a breaking point. They have their bills to pay and they have their own expenses, and this revenue matters to their lives as well. They are human beings also. And our intention is to pay them and make them whole. The problem is we have no money to do it with. So we're really lobbying government very hard at the moment for that. A rent deal was announced a couple days ago. It has a lot of holes in it. It's not a perfect plan. We've been giving feedback to government for them to hopefully take action on that. But for smaller neighborhood landlords, like our landlord at Ascari Enoteca and our landlord at High Low Bar, it should be an effective tool to some extent, for sure. They will qualify for it and they will likely enroll. So the problem on our end is that it's not up to us. The rent relief program doesn't provide relief to the tenants. It provides relief to the landlords. And the landlords need to choose to enroll in the program. And because Doug Ford has not instituted any moratorium on evictions, very few of them have good, strong motivation to enroll in this program. Because legally,
their deal is they're going to take once the government kicks in their 50%, you pay your 25%. They're short 25% if all in a perfect world.
Correct.
And they're not necessarily incentivized to play ball there, I guess.
Yeah, some of them will be, because they'd rather see 50 or 75% of their money rather than zero. So
what's the alternative? They're going to go on the market with a vacant unit. Who's going to lease that right now?
So there's different scenarios that people aren't considering in that. And one is that if you have a landlord who wants to develop the property, this is a perfect opportunity to eliminate the lease.
Right.
I'm not
So if
saying
it's a
any
land
of our
deal,
landlords have threatened that. I'm just saying that's a possibility. Secondly, the landlords don't know that in 3 months, they don't know what's going to happen. So they could say, okay, I'll take a haircut for 3 months. And then after that, they get zero again. So they may want to cut a different deal with the tenant to say, you know what, forget about this deal. Why don't you just pay me this for the next year? But then that might screw the tenant more or not. Like, the problem is that the program's not mandated. And
right.
it's not mandated because it was instituted by the federal government, but it's a provincial jurisdiction. So the federal government said, hey, we have a deal here. We're going to fund this. Now it's up to you to administer and figure it out. And the provinces haven't mandated that anyone participate in the program. If there was 100% compliance, then it would be a different landscape, right? Nobody could be evicted. Everyone would be on the hook for 25%. And then even that 25%, if you have a good landlord, you might be able to negotiate some kind of deferral. Because I'm happy to negotiate a deferral of 25% and figure out how to pay you back that with a little bit of interest in a couple of years. I can't do that on 100% of the rent.
Right.
We don't have the means to do that. So that's kind of where I think everyone's in the same boat. All restaurants have no money. If they're doing takeout, maybe like there's no way they can afford, 25, 50, 60% of the rent. Like, it's not possible. So it's going to be a better deal for some than others, but there's also an exclusion in this deal for restaurants or parent companies that do more than 20. It's a big problem for a lot of the big players in the city who all do more than $20 million as a group, and represent the lion's share of the jobs. So it's really short-sighted for the federal government to put this limit in place. Their objective in putting that limit was to exclude large corporate entities that don't need government help. The problem is what you've done is these people that make over $20 million are not large corporate entities. They just have large revenues. Yeah. Doesn't mean they're making a lot of money.
They also got large expenses.
They have large expenses, and by the way, they also employ the most number of people. So you're ensuring job loss at a massive scale. That limit, that $20 million a year limit of revenues for the tenant as an exclusion, should have been north of 100 or 200 million.
Right.
Because their objective was to exclude the Starbucks of the world. Yeah. But not to exclude the Tim Hortons franchisee, for example, right? The problem was they took that whole very huge middle section of medium-sized businesses that own hospitality groups across the country and basically threw them to the curb. Like in our city alone, that exclusion applies to Oliver Bonacini, McEwen, Buca, Gusto. Like I can go on and on. A Grant Van Gameren's group of companies, all of those people as a group earn well over $20 million a year. So you're losing the social fabric of independent operators in the city. And anyway, we've given them their feedback. Yeah. We said, this is horrible. You can't do this anymore. You can't just keep creating policy and not consulting the people who are advocating for that policy change. As to the details, they think they can figure things out on their own. They clearly cannot.
Right. Do you think the big hole there is, as you said, it came down from the federal government, and then, and then it's provincially legislated, and, when they're looking at things from a federal standpoint, the way business is done in a major urban center like Toronto is going to be far different than it's done in a lot of other smaller parts of the province or the country. And do you think Toronto business as a whole, especially in urban Toronto, is maybe more affected by this because of that? Because, we're so different. We're kind of our own bubble, to say, in a way.
Yeah, no, you couldn't be more right about that. I would say Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal are all included in that, Toronto the most, Vancouver close, but they all have very high commercial rents. So yes, they're trying to create policy that applies to the hair salon in Bob Cajun as much as it applies to a 200-seat restaurant on King Street West. And they don't.
Do you think that that's just one of those things that'll get ironed out over the next little while? imagine how tough it must be just to kind of like, consult, create the legislation and then roll it out in such a short amount of time. It's kind of like doing it backwards right now almost.
Yeah, for sure. There is definitely, we are sensitive to that fact. However, they have fixed some of their things they made mistakes on. The problem with our situation is that as May 1st approaches, we've already had a huge failure of restaurants after April 1st. People couldn't pay their rent, threw in the towel. We lost about 10% of all restaurants in the country April 1st. That number has been growing by the day as we approach May 1st. We think another 18% by tomorrow will be gone, unless they think that this rent relief package will be good for them.
Did you say a further 18% on top of the 10%, so 28%?
Yes, sir. And that's a conservative number. Yes, 100%.
Wow.
Like,
and then,
you're seeing some public closures.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
I was just going to say this one thing. Do you about this this rental program? Like, to me, it just sounds like it just kicks the can down the road to an inevitable failure for a lot of restaurants, right? I mean, I just don't understand how paying 25% of the rent for 3 months and all of a sudden you're going to have 100% revenue again.
Yeah.
When we're pretty much going to be physically distancing for another year, whether we're out and about or not.
I'm glad you can see that clearly. Unfortunately, people in government can't see that very clearly. Here's what we were asking for at Safe Hospitality. We approached the government and said, look, don't worry about making a rent deal. Just give us a stimulus package now and let us all figure out and make the strings attached to that stimulus package, paying our landlord, paying our suppliers, bringing a few employees on, and then having cash in the bank to relaunch. So we said, give us 10% of last year's sales in a cash stimulus, a package of forgivable loans. And if you do that, we'll pay the landlord 100%. And you don't have to worry about a rent deal, right? And then we'll negotiate with the landlord. Well, hey, look, we got this cash money. We're going to reopen. Don't worry, you're going to get rent, but we have to take a look at what that rent is based on sales moving forward, right? Whereas now what they've done is say, we're going to make a rent deal that lasts only 3 months and it kicks and makes people who have zero revenue pay 25%, which we don't have, right? And then come July 1, what's the scenario? Are we allowed to open even? We don't even know if we're allowed to open July 1. My vote is going to be August 1, the province allows us to open. So it's somewhere between July 1 and August 1. And when we open, do you think we're going to be 150 covers a night, packed restaurants? Like, there's no way.
People are going to be,
you're right.
whether you're able to handle that opening or not, like, people are going to be too scared to go out in en masse, so.
Exactly. So our question to government is, why not roll out what you think your stimulus package for hospitality is going to be? Let people know that you're doing something. You don't have to cut the checks right now. You don't have to finalize all the details, but let us know the skeleton of that plan. And then you'll see many less people throwing in the towel. Many less restaurants giving up now, because right now what they're looking at is a completely negative prognosis. They're looking at, I can't pay 25% of my rent. I can't access a bank loan that's significant enough for me to survive. And even if I could, I wouldn't be able to pay off that bank loan in the future with my diminished revenues anyway. So right now they're looking at, like, this is an impossible situation. I might as well claim bankruptcy now, then incur more debt and claim bankruptcy for a larger amount later. What's the point? So we're in this catch-22. So the more the government does this in a step-by-step, very slow, methodical way, the more they ensure the failure of a larger number of places.
Right.
And so when we say to them, you're doing very little compared to other G7 countries, they say, no way, we're spending way more as a percentage of our GDP than anyone else. When they say spending, what they mean is that they are backstopping loans and deferring taxes. And then they've given a lot of money to individuals, but they've been given next to no money to small business. Like a $40,000 loan with $10,000 forgivable is nice for a very small one storefront business who doesn't have high expenses. It does nothing for a restaurant. That doesn't even equal the rent at many restaurants in Toronto for 1 month.
Yeah, and the way they structured that loan, my wife just had to get it for her company. You can't just like take it all at once and do whatever you want with it. Like there are very strict rules to how you can use that money.
Correct. And that's okay. I don't mind those rules. I don't have an issue with that. I think that you should have rules about a loan like that. That's 25% forgivable. The problem is that it's just not enough money. It's not enough money. And the fact that 75% of it you have to repay just means that you're ensuring less profitability down the road. Our broad strokes of our proposal is this. The restaurant business in the country represents $93 billion a year in revenue. That is larger than many, many other industries. We also employ 1.2 million people. That's larger than the auto sector, the airline business, and the cruise business combined. Okay, so when you have a workforce that large, by the way, on that $93 billion, we contribute $30 billion to different tax revenues across the board every year. So we're also extremely highly taxed at 30%, right?
Yeah.
33%. So wouldn't you want to insure that tax base? Wouldn't you want to ensure the employment of 1.2 million people by saying we're going to invest $12 billion? That's all we're asking for. $12 billion bucks is 10% of last year's sales, right? Put that money in, let us get going and see if we can survive the year. Even if 50% of those people fail, it's still a good investment based on the tax revenue you're going to get down the road.
And I think
so, yeah, they're just not seeing that math clearly for some reason.
Right. And I think you make a great point there and what people need to realize is if that revenue stream is gone from government, like let's say 70% of that revenue stream is gone. That means 70% of that tax revenue stream is gone in the future. The government's going to need to find that somewhere else. And what, the public needs to realize is,
yes,
especially with a liberal government and, being in a very social, we're blessed for it, but social country, it's going to come down the line into personal taxes at some point in time.
Everybody's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to pay for it in sales tax, in income tax. All those taxes will be going up to pay for these measures. So using these measures to make smart investments is in the government's best interest at the moment. And
100%.
And they seem to think that they got it right with the individuals. The CERB, very well executed. The wage subsidy, if you can afford the cash outlay at the front of it, very effective. There's a lot, it doesn't work for hospitality business because with zero revenue, you can't hire anyone back. But in effect, it should work. But what they haven't realized is unless you actually give cash to some of these businesses to get through the crisis, there's no way for them to relaunch and reopen. Like we have no capital to do that with. Banks are going to give us nothing, like zero. And so we're really tied, unfortunately, to begging the government for more money. And if they don't do it, like you said, 70% will fail. That is actually the number. And that will be catastrophic, not just to our employees and our landlords, but to our supply chain. So 300,000 people are employed supplying restaurants every year. And we owe these people 1 or 2 months worth of payables that we have no means to pay them with. So if they're left holding that bag, they also go bankrupt.
Right.
My suppliers have told me that if 30% of their people go bankrupt, 30% or more, they're toast. They can't absorb it, right? So right now we're tracking to be north of that within 30 days.
Right.
So our whole supply chain just collapses.
Yeah,
like if you don't think if Cisco's in the GFS of the world are worried about this, they're worried.
Because we could be over 30% on May 1st. Like, you're saying another 18%, but it could easily be more.
Easily. And in the media, you're seeing closures of people who've announced it. There's many, many, many more quiet closures happening. People just deciding, I'm done, handing the keys back to the landlord. Thank you very much. See you later.
Well, that happened, to a very popular Leslieville business yesterday. I mean, I'm sure we all know the arts market very well.
Did they close?
They're not going. I mean, Daniel's a very smart businessman. He's not going anywhere, but he's got a number of locations. Just had to consolidate into his more successful locations. So You know, that's happening all over the place, and you know, some people are choosing not to make a big deal about it, and they're just kind of moving on. But yeah, it's, I mean, these stats that you're talking about, I'd say there's a margin of error of like 10 to 15% with the
Yes.
ones that aren't getting tracked. But on like a much more, I mean, if there is a, you know, silver, is there a silver line? Like, is there a light at the end of the tunnel that you see with this? I mean, you know, you have quite the group. You're a very organized, efficient hospitality group. You know, I've experienced all your restaurants, and I know I feel like you will get through this based on, you know, your following. But like, do you feel that as well? Like, are you optimistic at all? Um, you know,
There are
how do you
days, there are
feel?
days when we're like, hey, like, you know, I'll tell you what gives us optimism. Our team, our staff is amazing. They have been literally on our side, doing whatever they can, working for free from home, doing all kinds of stuff to try to put us back in business, try to help us with some revenue, try to help us like stay engaged with our clients. Um, the only way you can get through this is if you have a staff who are 100% invested, because there's no way like two owners, three owners could do it on our own. But there's days when you look ahead and you're like, I don't know how this is possible. When they reopen restaurants, say in July or August, there's going to be restrictions. So how do you make money at 50% capacity? Think of a
Yeah.
restaurant that makes money. What do you notice about them? They're packed all the time,
All the time.
right?
Yeah.
They're not making money at 50% capacity. So what does that mean for the experience? Does that mean, you know, we have to raise our prices double? We definitely have to have lower rents. That's a for sure. But if we're running 50% capacity, you can reduce your labor force, but that means people are losing their jobs. And it means like it's very troublesome, and that's nobody's fault. It's just going to have to be the way it is.
What about
No
doing like,
government
you know,
will smartly open and say, yeah, go and be packed. And if you look at Georgia, they opened their restaurants this week, and some of those restaurants for 2 days, 0 customers.
yeah.
So what's the temperature of people at home? Very low on the pecking order. So you have to create new revenue streams as a hospitality company, delivering full meal kits, providing online content, delivering curated alcohol selections with that meal, like all those things.
Yeah.
The problem with that is the margins are so much lower because you can't charge for delivering a food in a cardboard box the same as you do on a china plate with a wine glass and a server and music and all that. So you're doing it at a reduced margin, which means you got to get your volumes way up, and somehow you have to figure out your fixed costs.
Right. So let's move on. You know, that we come up with that point. Obviously, you know, part of the reason I reached out to you, I've been a huge fan for, you know, I think I moved into Leslieville about a decade ago. CNS was still around. I lived above Starbucks at Logan and Queen, and we used to watch security pull people out of CNS Diner. that used to be my entertainment. But you know, so I've been in the area for ages and coming for a while. And you know, my favorite Italian restaurant in the city. Even though I think the first 2 years you were open, I swore you were a coffee shop. And then one day I stumbled in for a late evening coffee and realized you were a restaurant. And, but you know, you guys have obviously pivoted with the food boxes, which is what made me reach out to you. You know, I got excited about that. I missed you guys. I had actually posted on my social media before you started the food boxes, how I missed you. And then when I saw it, I bought one right away. You know, what made you decide to make that pivot and go that route? And, you know, you mentioned some other business models that, you know, restaurants and hospitality groups could look at. Are there any other things that you are thinking of bringing to market during this time to try and help produce more revenues?
Yeah, good. It's a good question. So the grocery, we chose the grocery boxes over like takeout, for example, just because it was easier for us to continue to bring our experience to someone's home through the box rather than through takeout. Like our food doesn't travel well in a takeout box. So we'd rather give you the pieces and give you some instructions and then just provide some like Ascari and Gare style product, right?
Yeah.
So there's part of the grocery box is some prepared meal kit. Part of it is just like staples everybody needs, milk, eggs, whatever, but all super high quality. And then part of it is unique like produce and ingredients that we would use to put a salad together, and then show you how to do that with a recipe and with some online content. So we're working towards those recipes and online content. Another revenue stream is to sell dinner online. So what we would do is create like a 3-course meal, prepare that 3-course meal in its pieces in like a large box, sell people that box in like groups of 2 or 4, depending on how many in your household, and then deliver that box. And then that evening have like a 1-hour Zoom with all the chefs preparing that meal in front of you, showing you how to do it in your own kitchen with a glass of wine, everyone having some banter and some fun. And then you sit down with your family at home and eat the meal. So that's another kind of product we're working on bringing to market in the next couple of weeks. Some for private clients, some for like Toronto Life, some for, like Visa Infinite kind of experiences. They can't do them in-house anymore.
Yeah.
So they want to do them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great model. I mean, that'd be.
I love that idea so much. I think
I think
something I'd love to do and be excited about. I mean, I know when I got your box last week, I brought it home, and I'll be putting it out soon. But I made a little video of me and my kid whipping up some pasta using all the ingredients
I love it.
for my wife. But it was more food than I was expecting. I think it made pasta for like 8 of us, and there's only 3 in the house.
Good. Good value proposition. I like it.
Exactly.
When you said something about like, restaurants are packed and that's the vibe that people love and that's what ultimately contributes to your bottom line at the end of the day. But I feel like you can create almost a similar experience with what you just described. I mean, imagine first of all, we'll probably just start with big groups of friends having these online dinner parties this way.
Yes.
You could even do like the Ascari playlist. Okay, everybody press play on this Spotify playlist we just created, and then have that going in the background at the
100%.
same time. But once people get really comfortable with that situation, I can see it rolling out into just a whole bunch of strangers. Okay, so we have a 6 p.m. seating, a 7:30 seating, and like a 9. And then you just have random people literally just join this huge Zoom that have bought that particular day's package.
That's right.
I think it's going to take a little while for people to adopt, but I think for me, like I adapt very easily. So like if you told me something brand new that nobody's ever heard of, I'll be the first one to jump in there, even if it's going to burn me. I'll just still do it.
Right.
But I feel like that kind of thing will become relatively normal, and I think will contribute to you guys being successful down the road.
Yeah, I mean, we hope so. Look, and there are definitely revenue streams we haven't thought of yet that I'm sure over the next coming months we're going to have to figure out and adopt. Some of it might, like you have to be open to it. We're not saying no to takeout and delivery forever. We're saying no to it like right now. As our staff get more comfortable with being around each other in close quarters in a kitchen down the road, that'll be more possible. For the moment though, the reason why we took on this tack too is because we can manage social distancing in our kitchen to prepare these boxes, because you can spread the prep over long periods of time.
Right.
So the problem with takeout and delivery is it requires coordination in a kitchen of multiple people to get a bunch of dishes together at once for a takeout order, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that in our small kitchens, that creates a problem.
Right.
So as social distancing requirements are lessened over time, different things become possible.
Have you had many people take advantage of your curated wines? And, is there an opportunity there to, get more creative with alcohol?
Yeah, for sure. So we have had people take advantage of both our online wine shop with Nicholas Pierce Wines, where they provide a list of Ascari and Gare curated selections from their supply, and it's about 20 or 30 wines. And so that is branded, and you can't get to that through their website. You have to go through our Ascari wine shop to get there online. They sold about 1.5 pallets of wine last month with us, so it's good. And then we also, of course, sell wine with our grocery boxes, and we like this week we sold about 56 grocery boxes and about 4 or 5 cases of wine. So the uptake's good, and there's more to come with us. Stay tuned for wine, we have some things in the pipe for wine and cocktail kits that we're going to be launching in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Love to hear.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love to hear, new things coming to market, obviously everyone right now, just like it's difficult for you guys as a business, everyone at home is looking for new ways to, interact and get a taste of what they're missing and what they love. And, a lot of us, there's some people who are uber creative and have figured out ways to make it happen, but a lot of us need to be told how, right? And those uber creatives are probably the people that are having dinner parties at their house and weren't going to the restaurants in the first place. Whereas like I ate out probably 3 to 4 nights a week pre-COVID. I can only eat so much rice and beans.
I know the problem with us is that you're giving all your money to like Loblaws and Longos right now. Like I heard some
did you
crazy
hear Loblaws
numbers.
posted their sales like $1 billion more this quarter than last year or something like that?
Yes, I heard about the sales numbers for one store, for like one of their super centers that normally averaged 1.2 million a week, currently doing 2.7 million a week.
Wow.
I mean,
let's see if we can
more than double.
divert some of those funds to you.
That's
this
all
week
restaurant money.
Video.
That's all restaurant money.
I find it crazy because not even only restaurants, but like I try to go to the local grocers and local shops along Queen and Kingston Road and so on and so forth, just to get fruits and produce and meat. And it's slightly more expensive, but I never wait in line maybe for 5 minutes. And then, I'll be on Lakeshore going somewhere and I'll look at the Loblaws at Lakeshore and Leslie and there's like a 2-hour wait.
Yeah,
I'm like,
why would you do that?
Waiting?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think most people just don't even know they have other options. You know what I mean? So like the local green grocery has been hard to find. But now luckily we've been lucky on the east side. Leslieville has had a lot of great options other than the big ones, but people just don't know yet.
Here's also the thing. People are not going into that Loblaws who are lined up. Not all of them want to buy fresh produce. They eat packaged processed foods. So they rely on frozen pizzas and all that stuff that Loblaws carries that your corner store or Maselli's on the Danforth or Butchers of Distinction or all these great local individual places, they don't carry that stuff, right? You have to actually know how to cook to shop at your local store.
Right. They want the the pre-breaded frozen chicken fillets and the pot pies that are frozen and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
which is why it's incumbent upon the local guys to now provide that kind of pre-made food, but in a much better tasting, more wholesome package, right?
Yeah, because you do see some of them thriving, like one of the ones I've seen that's doing fairly well near me is Courage Foods, which is like Kingston Road in Scarborough. And, they already did kind of prepared, like they had 3 different homemade soups every day and pre-made salads and quiches and stuff like that. Yeah. And they seem to be doing really well because they also sell your produce and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think you make a good point there. I never really thought of it.
Mix. Yeah, it's the perfect mix.
Yeah. I never really thought of the fact that, hey, like I don't buy that much frozen food. I try to buy fresh food and eat fairly clean and healthy. So I never thought about the fact that, everyone's lined up for Loblaws because they are used to eating that pre-prepared food that they just shove in the oven or the microwave and it's ready to go.
Well, we're not here to talk about Loblaws. Screw those guys. We're here to talk about the Ascari Hospitality Group and all the awesome stuff you have for people. So what's a good way to reach you? Like where's the number one place you want people to go to find all the stuff that you have?
So if you go to Ascari HGEA, that's Ascari Hospitality Group.ca, you can find on there our grocery box. And it'll show you what's on offer this week. And then it'll also show you all the possible add-ons. So we have a number of cool add-ons that you can throw in. For example, I went up last week to a farm that my business partner, Eric's family owns, and we dug a whole bunch of wild leeks out of the forest. And we've got them included in our box and for sale in addition to the box this week. So not too many people sell ramps in their online grocery box. So that's one cool option. We're doing like organic chocolate milk as your like guilt-free kind of guilty pleasure this week. We've got our prepared meal this week is our handmade guitar pop with our braised meat sugo, so like a long slow cooked sauce with meatballs, lamb ribs, and pork sausage, like things like that. Like basically Sunday afternoon cooking, but kind of done 90% for you with lots of nice garnishes, as well as some really interesting like salad stuff, like Castle Franco lettuce, radicchio lettuce, and things that you don't even see at your normal corner green grocer. So we're trying to add like value like that, like on brand, interesting stuff. And I mean, my family bought a box this week. What does that tell you? Like my mom and dad went down and bought a box. So, you know, even they think it's a cool idea, and they like what the lineup is.
So listen, I saw on your Instagram that you weren't doing deliveries yet. Did that start now?
It's coming. Yeah, we just procured a vehicle and got our driver set up, and we are starting delivery within, I believe it'll be for next boxes delivery, not the ones happening this week, but the following Thursday. And we'll also be starting grocery boxes from our Ascari King location that week as well, but for pickup and delivery on the Fridays.
Okay, nice. And then of course people can do gift cards as well. If
you can do gift cards, and still 50% of every gift card purchased goes directly into a fund, internal fund we have that support the staff that are most vulnerable in our family. So of the 97 staff we laid off, of course, there's a number of people there who were particularly financially insecure, and 50% of that fund goes directly to a group managed by our managers who are confidentially in touch with these staff and say, here's what you need to help you get through the rent and the groceries for this week.
That's a beautiful thing. I love it. Okay, so, Ryan, should I wrap it up?
Yeah, just one quick, more thing, because when we originally decided to do this, we really wanted to focus on East End businesses. So, but obviously COVID took it in a different direction that we're looking at how, these businesses are pivoting. But, before I let you go, I just wanted to kind of ask, why did you start in the East End? What do you love about the East End of the city? Ara and I are both, big advocates of the East and both live East. So, what's your affinity as a company with the East, and how do you feel about the community, so on and so forth?
Yeah, so we have obviously a really, really strong affinity with the East End. We opened our first, our second restaurant that Eric and I ever opened was Queen and Broadview, called Table 17. That was around for 7, almost 8 years. 3 years after that, we opened Ascari Enoteca at Queen and Caroline, and a year after that, we opened High Low Bar. So for the past 12 years, we've been in operation on Queen Street East in some capacity. The neighborhood has been so insanely supportive of what we do and how we do it. We're very grateful, but also very happy that the way we do business has resonated with these people. That people appreciate our style of hospitality, and we're very familial and very, very professional and informed, but very casual and without pretense. And there's a reason why we've succeeded on Queen Street East and in Leslieville. It's because I think that the way we do business fits with the kind of people that live there. So we're super grateful. And, now that we've had Gare de l'Est for almost 3 years now, too, at Dundas and Carlaw, we're just, the East End is our kind of vibe. Every time we get servers, we hire, lots of people from the West End will eventually move east and then look for a new job. And we have had servers who've been in the business for a long time, and they've been serving at West End restaurants for a long time. They start working at one of our places in the East End, and they're like, after a week, they're in shock. They're like, these customers are amazing. I can't believe the kind of people we're getting through the door. And that's no knock on West End clientele, but it just speaks to the kind of community vibe that exists in the East End. And
John,
we're very grateful for it.
Yeah, John, I totally agree there. I don't know if you remember it. I used to run District Sushi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember.
Before I got into real estate, I ran District Sushi, and definitely same thing. I had worked in a ton of different restaurants and bars, around the world. And I had just come back to Toronto after a 6-year hiatus, and definitely felt the vibe of running an East End restaurant. The people, they became family and came in regularly. And, every Friday, Saturday night, you knew you were going to have some people in that you'd have a good time with. And
100%.
it's a great vibe that way.
Hopefully that family can pull us all through this time right now. And
we can't
and I
wait
think
to
they
have
are.
those people back. We can't wait to have them back. Yeah.
Awesome.
Guys,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
Thanks
Thank you so
thanks
much,
for
John.
joining us, John. And yeah, so everybody make sure that you check out Ascari and pick up one of their boxes, food boxes, and look for some of the other items that we've talked about and services that they're going to have coming down the pipe. And also, if you can, buy a gift card, as 50% of it is going to support one of their staff in need. And so here,
Thank
right
you guys
here.
so much. Oh, there
All
you
right,
go.
guys, take care.
Beautiful.
There's the
There you
site
Have a
right
good
there,
one.
AscariHG.com. Talk to you guys later.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, John.